So for this part of the series, investigation and charges, what should I expect during an investigation?
So when a victim first makes a police report, they're given a document with resources to help them process and to heal. The investigators will, so when an initial report is made, it's generally made by a patrol officer. A detective will then do a more deep interview. We do what's called a victim-centered, trauma-informed interview. And what that does is it puts the victim in the center of our investigation. And the way we interview, the questions that we ask are very geared toward the trauma that a person has received. A person who has experienced a traumatic event doesn't process information or memories the same. Their memories are scattered. So we don't ask a linear or chronological questions, the who, what, when, and where questions. We ask more questions about the experience. It's easier for them to tap into their feelings as opposed to a timeline. So the questions are very different than what you would expect, like you see on television. From there, we will interview bystander witnesses. So we know that in sexual assaults, generally there's no witnesses to the actual event, but there are peripheral witnesses that you may not think about. People who may have seen the suspect plying the victim with alcohol, or the suspect carrying the victim intoxicated and the victim can't walk themselves. So there's some witnesses that are important to the event that may not actually have witnessed the event. The first person that the victim talks to after the assault is very important because they get information that may not come out during an interview. So we'll interview the witnesses, we'll interview the suspect, and we'll, if the victim goes to the hospital, we'll collect the evidence from the exam at the hospital. We will gather all of that investigation and we will write what's called a probable cause. We'll present that probable cause to the prosecutor's office. If the victim wants to file charges, we'll present the probable cause to the prosecutor's office, and then they will decide if there's enough to file charges.
Great, thank you. If charges are filed, what happens then?
So if the prosecutor decides that there is enough to file charges, they take over the case. They will do a couple of things. They will either issue an arrest warrant for the suspect to be picked up, or they will issue a summons for him or her to come into court. And that's basically they're giving them a court date for them to appear in court. If they don't appear in court, then they will issue a arrest warrant for them at that point. The biggest concern that a victim generally has is whether or not they will have to testify in court. There's always a possibility that they will testify. Most often, not all the time, those charges end in a plea deal, and that's where the suspect pleads to a lesser charge or a different charge, and the victim does not have to testify in court. If they do have to testify in court, the prosecutor will go over the victim, the type of questions are going to be asked by the prosecutor. They'll go over the type of questions that will be asked by the defense attorney. So the victim will have an idea of what questions are going to be asked, and they would be more prepared for that court proceeding.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.